Hi everyone, this is my second video of factoring quadratics. Some more examples on how this is going to go with the puzzle method, okay? So this is my second video, so I hope you watched the first one. So what's different in this video is that we see our trinomial, but now I'm selecting some with some negatives, okay? Don't be scared, I just want to show you that it works out the same way, okay? All right, so our first thing that we have to do is identify our A, B, and C. That's our first step. Let's scoot the camera down a little bit. Our A, B, and C. And remember, anything with the x squared is going to be our A, anything with just the x is going to be our B, and anything here is going to be our C. Okay, there's no variable attached to it. So let's go ahead and identify. I don't have a number here, so it's our imaginary 1, so A is 1, B is 4, and C is negative 32. Don't forget the negative 32, because it's right here, negative 32, okay? Our next step is to determine what A times C is. A times C. And that's 1 times negative 32, okay? And 1 times negative 32 is negative 32, okay? Now we're getting right into our puzzle. We're going to figure out the two numbers that multiply to equal A times C. I'll just draw a box here so we know. So this is our A times your C, and those same two numbers have to add to equal your B, okay? And I'll draw little boxes here just so we know what's going where. So our A times C is negative 32. Our B is right here, and that is 4, okay? So let's go ahead and determine what two numbers multiply to equal 32, okay? I just like to start off there. We know it's going to be a negative, but let's just start with two numbers that multiply to 32, okay? So we know 1 times 32 is 32. We know 2 times 16 gives us 32. 3 times nothing, so we're going to skip on to number 4 times 8. Okay, so we know one of these is going to have to be negative. We know one of these is going to have to be negative because it multiplies to negative 32. So only one of them. 1. Okay. Now, which one is it going to be? Which of these combinations can bring us to a 4? So 32, minus 1, or, that would not bring us anywhere close to 4, because 32 minus 1 is going to be 31. 16 minus 2 is not going to bring us close to 4, because that would be 14. 8 minus 4 is 4. Oh, okay. So this one's got to be the negative. 8 minus 4. Let's try it. So 8 times negative 4 is negative 32. And 8 plus negative 4 is a positive 4. 8 minus 4 is 4. Perfect. Now remember, this one right here, these two numbers are replacing our B essentially. That's why we are doing this, so we can end up getting into factor by grouping. So I'm going to rewrite what we're going to do. So we keep our A, and we keep our C, and we're just going to be replacing our B with two numbers, okay? So we're going to say x squared, all right, because that's our A, plus 8x, and we have a negative 4, so we're going to say minus 4x, okay? That's where we got the minus from, because minus 4, and then we're going to take our C, minus 32, okay? Now, we're going to factor by grouping. So I'm going to take this piece here and write x squared plus 8x and this piece right here and say negative 4x minus 32. Let's go ahead and draw our ladders and start factoring out. So what do these two have in common? It's the x, because they both have the x. X squared divided by x leaves us with x, plus 8x divided by x. The x's cancel out. We're left with 8. Now, looking at this one here, I see a negative, and I don't like negatives. No, no, no. So I'm going to pull out the negative right here. What do they have in common? A 4. So let's go ahead and get into it. This one has an x, this one does not. That's why we're not pulling out an x or anything like that. So negative 4 divided by negative 4 is going to be a positive 1, and we're just going to write our x. And negative 32 divided by a negative 4 is a positive 8. And look, these two match. So we're going to go ahead and write our final answer. So we have x and negative 4. Because I pulled this negative out, so we're going to say x minus 4 times x plus 8. X plus 8. And that's your answer here. I can go ahead and do another example. I'm going to go ahead and erase this. I'm doing puzzle method. So I'm going to write x squared plus x minus 12. Okay? So let's go ahead and identify our A, B, and C. Okay? So we know our A is going to be here, our B is going to be here, and our C is right here. Now I don't have a number here, so that's 1. I don't have a number here, so I'm going to put it in my imaginary 1, and that's going to be a 1 here. And then I'm going to put in my negative 12. Negative 12. Okay, because the negative's here, negative 12, okay? All right, now, let's go ahead and figure out our A times C. A times C, 1 times negative 12, and 1 times negative 12 is negative 12, okay? That's our A times our C. Now, let's go ahead and get into our puzzle. We're going to say blank times blank equals A times C. Blank plus blank equals whatever B is. And let's go ahead and take a look at that. Okay. So our A times our C is negative 12. And our B right here is a positive 1. So let's go ahead and figure out what numbers multiply to 12. So we know 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, okay? Now, I know it's going to have to add to 1. So we know that one of these is going to have to be negative, one of them, because this is a negative 12, one of them. And this is a positive 1. So we know that whichever combination, the smaller one has to be negative. So let's go ahead and look at that. So if we know that this is going to be positive, let's just go ahead and write negatives in front of all of our smaller numbers. So 12 minus 1 is 11. 6 minus 2 is 4. 4 minus 3 is 1. Okay? So we know we're going to use this one right here. So we're going to write negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. Negative 3 plus 4, or 4 minus 3, is 1. Perfect, right? Now let's go ahead. We know that those two numbers, these right here, are replacing our B, okay? So let's go ahead and write out our new equation, because we're going to factor by grouping. We're going to keep our A and we're going to keep our C. So I'm going to go ahead and write down here x squared, and remember it's minus 3x, because negative 3x, positive 4, so plus 4x, and then we're going to keep our C, minus 12. All right, let's go ahead and get into grouping. So we're going to take this piece right here, and we're going to write x squared minus 3x, and then this piece right here, 4x minus 12. Let's go ahead and draw in our ladder. What do these two have in common? They have an x, so x squared divided by x is x. Negative 3x divided by x, we're going to be left with a negative 3, and x divided by x cancels out. And then we have 4x minus 12 over here. What do they have in common? 4. Okay, so this one has an x, this one does not. That's why we're leaving it. 4 divided by 4 is 1, so we're going to leave our x. Negative 12 divided by 4 is negative 3. Oh, look, they match. Perfect. So we're going to go ahead and write our answer. We're going to say x plus 4 times x minus 3. And that is your final answer. Okay. Now, I do want to show you one more. And let's go for it. Okay. Puzzle method. All right. So let's go ahead and get into it. We have x squared minus 64. What do I notice about this one? I notice that I only have 2 terms here, but I still have a squared. So this one is going to be your A, and this one's going to be your C, because there is no in between. Okay? Because the in between one, with the one with the plain x, so essentially you could really rewrite it as x squared plus 0x minus 64, okay? Because your b does not exist, okay? So it's a 0. So we know this is A, this one's B, and this one's C, okay? So let's go ahead and identify our A, B, and C. So our A does not have a number, so that is our 1. Our B is a 0, and our C is a negative 64. Okay? So our next step is A times C, 1 times negative 64, and that tells you the answer is going to be negative 64 for your A times C. Okay? Now let's go ahead and get into our puzzle method. So it's going to be blank times blank equals whatever A times C is, and the same numbers have to add blank plus blank to whatever your B is. So A times C is negative 64. A times C is negative 64. And your B is 0. Okay, so let's look at different numbers that go into 64. Okay, so we know 1 times 64, oh, I'm sorry, let me move the camera over. 1 times 64 is 64. And we're going to just kind of go, we're going to just go with it, okay? So 64, 2 times 32 is going to be 64. 3 doesn't go into 64. 4 times 16 is 64. And we know that 8 times 8 is 64, okay? Now we know it has to be, one of these is going to have to be a negative, okay? So we're going to have to figure out which one, if we subtract it, is going to get us to 0. So 64 minus 1 does not get us 0. 32 minus 2 doesn't get us to 0. 16, minus 4 does not get us to 0, but 8 minus 8 will get us to 0. So let's try it. Negative 8 times 8 is negative 64. Negative 8 plus 8 is 0. Perfect. And remember, these two are replacing essentially what our B is. So let's go ahead and write this out. So we're going to take our a, and our a was this x squared. So we're going to say x squared, okay? And then we're going to, and we're going to say our negative 8x, and then we're going to say plus 8x, and then we're going to take our c, and that's very important too, negative 64. And we're going to go ahead and factor by grouping, okay? So we have this piece here, so it's x squared minus 8x, and we have this one, 8x minus 64. Let's draw our ladders in here. And what does this one have in common? We're going to go ahead and pull out our x. So x squared divided by x is x, and negative 8x divided by x is negative 8. Okay, here, what do these two have in common? We have an 8. So 8 divided by 8, we're left with x. And negative 64 divided by 8 is negative 8. And look at that, these two match. So we're going to go ahead and write our final answer. And it's going to be x plus 8 times x minus 8. And that is our final answer.